And I thought my visual aid is kind of appropriate considering what's going on in the world in our country. It's a dollar bill. And on the back it says, "In God we trust." Do we really? As I mentioned a little bit yesterday, Jeremiah was getting in trouble for a number of reasons, but there were three principal ones. He came from a priestly family that years and years and years before had sided with one of David's sons against Solomon. So his family was not in favor. And they were kind of told to go away from Jerusalem, and they went back to this little town that they lived in and everything else like that. So he was an outsider to the Jerusalem crowd. Secondly, he had a message that they hated, which was two-part. One was that they were not keeping their part of the covenant. And he thought very much like the book of Deuteronomy. The people who wrote the book of Deuteronomy thought that God will bless you if you do what you're supposed to do, and will punish you if you don't do what you're supposed to do. So therefore, if the people were not following the covenant, then don't be surprised if bad things happen. Okay? One of those bad things was the Babylonians. And that's the next part of the message that they hated. He said, don't resist them. Let them come. You'll save Jerusalem and you'll save the temple if you don't fight back. So they thought he was like a peacenik, or he was anti-government and all that kind of a thing. So for all those reasons put together, they always persecuted Jeremiah and did all those terrible things I mentioned yesterday in the homily. But Jeremiah kept saying, you got to do your part of the covenant, and you got to trust in God. As an aside, on Easter Sunday, you get a chance to recommit to the covenant. It's called your baptismal promises. And if you're like me, you had a parent or a godparent who said those things for you. And we have a tendency to be divorced as we grow older from those original baptismal promises. But that's our version of the covenant. And every year on Easter Sunday, we have to recommit to that, and the priest or deacon comes along and sprinkles you with holy water to remind you of your baptism. So during Lent, I always tell people nowadays, one of the things you should be doing is wondering and examining how well you've been keeping your baptismal promises, because that's your side of the covenant, your promises to God. Okay. We need to trust in God, and now's a time in our country and the world where that's really needed, isn't it? It's bad enough with the Democrats versus the Republican business that you see played out on TV every day, to the point where I keep channel surfing because I can't stand it when they keep going back against each other. Then we've got this coronavirus spreading throughout the world that's now declared a pandemic and everything else like that. We need somebody we can really rely on that's there for us. In God we trust. At these times, we need to trust in God more than normal. I didn't think it was a coincidence, because in biblical Hebrew, there's no word for coincidence. Okay? There are no coincidences. Okay? In daytime prayer today, I hate to admit this, I already prayed daytime prayer before I came. But anyway, I got some chores to do when I leave here. We pray Psalm 56 and Psalm 57. And what's one of the verses in Psalm 56? In God I trust, I shall not fear. What can mortal man do to me? In Psalm 57, in the shadow of your wings I take refuge till the storms of destruction pass by. These are good words for us to think about today. Because as Jeremiah said, and as our psalm verses said today, if we trust in God, we're like a plant or a tree that always has waters. It doesn't matter whether or not it rains or not. God waters us from the stream, and that's the stream of His grace.